Okay, we've got a few things to get through before I introduce our special guest. We've got a bunch of milestones this week. 50th game to Jordan Pepper in the field, Michael Polnitz in the boundary, Riley Jensen in the goal. 100 games up for Andrew Crosby, Cameron McLeod, Sal Smotsky, and Ryan Wood, all the fieldies. 200th game to Chris 80, goal umpire. 300th game to Phil Devlin, who does field umpiring and goal umpiring. A 400 game to Kim Alley, field umpire, and a couple of field umpires doing their 600th game this week. So big congratulations to Simon Hedger and Tony Simon. So Tony is after you, Barry. He does enough games to challenge you in a few years' time, but yeah, he's got a bit to go. Then our first lot of grand finals this week. So Division 3 Women's Grand Final. Congratulations to Aaron Raval and Greg Von Einem. Division 4 Women's Grand Final, Rob McKay, Alison McMeekin. Division 5 Women's Grand Final to Brett Crowhurst and James Pascalis. And the Division 6 Women's Grand Final to Martin Dawn and Simon McMahon. So well done to all you guys. I will send out the complete list, which includes the boundaries and goals with the email that goes out. This week, preliminary and grand final umpires in the women's games need tickets, so make sure you come to training to get them. A note about water carriers, just make sure that you're aware of the rule that they're only meant to be on the ground during a shot for goal or after a goal has been scored. If you're seeing it hang around at other times, just warn them to get off. No need to pay a free kick unless it's exceptional circumstances. Just use your communication skills to get them off. Maybe remind the matchday official if you have to send the message. Big news around our training venue. The CBC have notified us that in a couple of weeks they're having work on their main oval. So we'll be at the normal venue for the next 2 weeks. And for the last 4 Wednesdays of the year, we'll be back at Thebarton Oval. So Thebby's taken over by the Crows at the beginning of October. It'll be a bit of a farewell to Thebarton Oval for the last month of training. And the last note I've got, the association providing a free barbecue after training this Wednesday night. With drinks offered at reduced prices. So I'll whip through that. There's a fair bit to get through. Basically, because we've got an AdFL umpire online, I wanted to spend the rest of the Zoom having a chat with him. Jamie, if you want to unmute yourself, mate, I've just muted everybody. So, yeah, good to see that you've been able to do that. Welcome to Zoom. It's great to have you on board.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Colin. You definitely whipped through a lot of those milestones, and you almost brushed over a fair few because there were some big ones in there, a couple of 600s from Tony Simons and Cros with 100 and a few others rolling through. So congratulations to a lot of you guys. That's an exceptional achievement, a lot of those milestones. So well done with all of that.
Yeah, very good. And you're setting your own milestones, mate. So for those that don't know, Jamie is a very unassuming umpire. You wouldn't he's not a household name, unlike the one we're going to get on next week, which I'll talk about later. But Jamie is actually from South Australia. We've been lucky enough to interview all the South Australian AFL umpires, field umpires, and you're the last on the list. So it's great to be able to have a chat to you, Jamie. I suppose in your own words, just give us a rundown of your background, how it all started for you.
Yeah, so I actually grew up in Sydney. So AFL wasn't first naturally to me with it being a very big football state over there. And then made my way across to Adelaide when I was about 10 years old and then realised that rugby league didn't really exist in Adelaide, so then had to pick up the art of footy and what that involved there, and then grown it up, loving it as a kid and all the rest, and then as a lot of us did, probably didn't have the skill level to go on with it. Was probably frustrated with the umpires that were umpiring my games and thought I could do a bit of a better job, so decided to make the transition across to field umpiring, and I sort of started through in the juniors through Metro South Junior Football League at that time, and then jumped across into Sandford Juniors, and then went through the pathway from there, 16s, 18s, reserve league, and then got rookie listed for a couple of years, and then was fortunate enough to find myself on the list and made the move to Melbourne.
So what year did you first do Sandford League footy? Just give us an idea of the timeline.
So Sandford League footy, I made my debut in, what would have that been? 2016, I think it was. 14, no, maybe 2015. So around 2015, 2016, I think I finished up with about 70 odd league games, with several finals. Didn't get lucky enough to run an actual grand final, but sat as an emergency for a grand final. And then within that period, I was rookie listed with the AFL for 2 years prior to getting on.
Yeah. Now we should paint the picture because while I said you're unassuming, you actually appear in a lot of big games. Let everyone know what number you are, then people might remember who you are.
Yeah, so running around with number 20, which used to be Sam Hayes' number, who's also a fellow South Australian. And yeah, it's been a pretty fortuitous year so far. I've been really enjoying footy, been really given some great opportunities. This year, did a Carlton Collingwood game earlier in the year. Is probably one of the bigger games, and then fortunate enough to have done the last 3 Friday night games, with the last one being Sydney Collingwood, which ended up being a thriller on the weekend, which was great. But yeah, like you said, Colin, I try to stay away from it all, and just go out there, and the game's not about us. We just facilitate it. When they don't want to play footy, we get involved. So. And yeah, just go about my business in a pretty quiet, humbling way, to be honest.
So how many games you up to in the AFL? And I think you did a final last year, is that right?
Yeah. So up to 90, I think 96 now. I'm just reflecting. I'm not sure if any of you guys saw the roaming Brian from a couple of weeks ago. He went down into the umpires' change rooms following Melbourne and the Bulldogs, I think it was, yeah. And he made his way into our change rooms and actually caught a lot of us by surprise. And I'm not sure if you saw, but I was half eating a lamb korma at the time, and he tried to come in quite candid with it all. So yeah, that was a very interesting experience, and he's a lovely guy actually. We were talking once we got off air, and yeah, he obviously goes about his business the way he wants to go about it, but it was nice that he actually had the time to actually come down and check us out and actually just give a bit of a character to what umpires are. Because no doubt you speak to a lot of people, and people think like AFL umpires just sort of shoot up into the air after they do a game at the MCG, and then the next week they just land back in the middle of the MCG and they roll around again. People sort of don't put a personality to the face itself. So I think that was really good what BT did a couple of weeks ago.
So which final did you have last year?
Sydney Carlton, which was an elimination final. The Blues won by a goal. I think it was about 94,500 or so. Yeah, it was a massive crowd. The biggest one I've had to date. You really know when it's loud at the MCG. We wear match comms, as you've probably heard from a lot of the other guys. And I remember coming in to do a bounce. I think it was with a few minutes to go, and you wait for the chime in your ear, which pretty much notifies you that they're back from broadcast and they're ready for you to commence play and bounce the ball. And I couldn't even hear the chime within my own ear. And I had to look at the other umpire and sort of like go, "Is the chime happen?" type thing. And they sort of gave me a signal, and I was like, "All right, we must be ready to go now." So yeah, it was a buzz. It was a great atmosphere, and fingers crossed, I'm hoping to try to add to that tally this year and hopefully cement a finals berth again. But yeah, we'll wait and see. As the classic cliche is, you're just taking it week at a time. So
yeah, and so let's take it to last Friday night, because I was listening on the radio for most of the game and then came back for the last 5 minutes, and I thought you just looked as composed as ever and handled the situation really well. There's been a little bit of discussion about umpiring, as there always is, but when do you review a game? Do you review it the next day, or what's the process for a review?
Yeah, so personally for me, it depends on where I umpire. Last weekend I was in, as you know, Sydney on Friday night. I then caught up with one of my best mates that lives up in Sydney, so it sort of delayed it all a little bit. So I ended up rewatching the game on Sunday. So generally, personally, I rewatch the entire game and go through and critique my own performance in terms of what I think I could have done better, what I've done well. And then from there, we await coaches' feedback. So they send through vision to us individually. and then we put in our comments. They put in their comments for their feedback, and then we generally have a conversation on the Monday, which I still haven't had a chance to call my coach from the weekend yet, but I'll probably do that on the way home. And then we'll just chat about the game itself in terms of those different elements that popped up around, your decision making, your skills, your management, your teamwork, your communication. And yeah, you're always finding little bits to try to just get better as an umpire and as a person out there.
So, out of interest, how did you review your game from Friday night?
Yeah, I thought I went fairly well. There was a couple of things that I picked up, which I thought I could have done better. But from a game like that, ideally, we want to get everything as right as we can. As we know, it's a very imperfect game, so it's not always the case. But in a game like that, to show composure and confidence and really strong management throughout the game itself, with obviously trying to get as many of the free kicks right as we can, I think is the real big ticket item from a close game like that, Colin. Yeah.
I don't want to go too controversial or hard hitting, but there have been some comments from one losing coach about decisions being made at a venue away from home. Just sort of not necessarily talking about those particular comments, but how do you think AFL umpires and yourself react to home crowds and their reactions to what you're doing?
It's funny you say that. I thought it'd actually be a lot more influential, but I must admit, I even reflect on when I was umpiring in Sandford and we didn't have match com and things. I almost think that external noise is a lot more influential than it is actually on the ground as an AFL umpire, because you're so wide into the game and you're in constant communication with the other umpires out there. The noise is just a blur. So you don't really ever feel like it's shifting or anything like that, if that makes sense. Like it's quite an interesting sort of concept, because you're very much in tune with what the others are doing and where you've got to be at certain times. And then, essentially going from there, that you don't really get a sense that, maybe, for instance, let's just say Collingwood Sydney, right? Even the classic is supporters always going on about free kick counts and things. As you know, you're out there, you're in the heat of the battle. You've actually got no idea what decisions are going either way. And then classically, you finish the game, and then obviously one coach or spectators are going on about free kick counts or whatever it is. But as you know, when you're out there, you couldn't really care less. You just want to get the decisions right. You don't care which team it's to.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that thinking. And another big game this week. I've been privy to the appointments. You've got a pretty crucial game this weekend.
Yeah, I'm going back to Sydney. It's happened actually a couple of times this year. I did a double trip to Queensland, and now I'm doing a double trip to New South Wales. So the Giants and Fremantle on Saturday, which, like you said, Colin, like who knows where it's going to sit. Fremantle obviously pretty disappointed after their loss against Geelong, and they could be very much on the verge of not making finals now if they drop, I think, even one, if not, both of their next two games. So it should be interesting. There's also a couple of other really good games this week. Collingwood Brisbane will be interesting, considering that's played at the MCG. And Sydney Essendon. I know the Bombers are obviously, I don't think, in finals contention now, but I think they'll probably want to try to assert their authority on Friday night too. And then even Carlton, they're falling in a bit of a heap at the moment, and I think that's a tough task to go over to West Coast. And obviously they've got a few injuries by the sounds of it too. So there's still a lot to play out with only 2 rounds to go. So
it's an amazing competition, and we've got this small little game called a showdown over here that's happening as well. So I see the pictures in the background. I know that you've taken time off work early today to be able to speak to us, which is fantastic. Tell us what you do for work, because I've got an understanding of what you do, but
so I'm a physiotherapist by trade. I've also got an undergraduate degree within clinical exercise physiology. So I spent 6 years at the University of South Australia. I was working at the Royal Adelaide Hospital with a guy by the name of Theron Phil, which I know a lot of people probably on the call would know that name. So it's he always kept me on my toes in the hospital setting. And then yeah, when I made the move across to Melbourne, I was hoping to stay within the hospital setting as a physio, but they required occasional weekend work, and as you know, we can't really have flexibility with that. So landed within private practice. And so, yeah, I've been working at a private practice in Essendon for the last 4.5 years now. And yeah, really enjoying it. So generally seeing musculoskeletal, but we also work closely within vertigo and dizziness clients, and also TMJ, so jaw related clients too. So you're not just getting the run of the mill back or neck every day. It actually spices it up throughout the day, which is good too.
Yeah, nice. So, what made the move to Melbourne? Were you told you had to, or did you make the choice?
Yeah, so when I got on, it was strongly encouraged, or strongly advised. I don't think it was you had to, but if you read between the lines, it's in your best interest if you really want to make a strong career out of it. And that's always the attitude that I've had is you get one shot at it. Why would you put anything in jeopardy to not get the best out of yourself while you've got the opportunity to? So yeah, it was a no-brainer from where I was sitting. And I always had the inkling if I did make it, I was going to move. And then just got in contact with a few of the other interstate guys that had moved over and found where they were living. And I lived pretty much in the neighbouring suburb, just so we're all pretty close. And yeah, sort of put myself halfway between training and the airport because the guys were like, yeah, you have to travel a fair bit. And at that time, that was obviously quite a novelty. But yeah, they're right. You find you're spending a lot of time at the airport.
So, have you enjoyed living in Melbourne? Is there any plans to move
Yeah,
to Adelaide
let
any
me tell
stage?
you, the weather is absolutely miserable. And I've really not enjoyed that side of things. I was even speaking to a few clients like later last week, and tops of 13 degrees and 12 degrees and 1 degree overnight. And you're just going, if it wasn't for footy, I don't think I'd be living here because the weather is just so miserable in during the winter. But we had 20 degrees today, and even the people coming through the clinic, you just see how much people's mood was so much better as a result of some warmer weather. So, and then obviously, you got the Australian Open, you got the Formula One, you've got a lot of the concerts and other things that entertainment that come through Melbourne, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, cool. Any thoughts to moving back to Adelaide at any stage, or would that be way down the track?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think I'm pretty settled, to be honest, a little bit in Melbourne. As I touched on earlier before, I've lived in Sydney, I've lived in Adelaide, and now living in Melbourne. So I don't think I've really ever had a strong base of where I've grown up type thing. So I'm pretty used to being on the move. So yeah, I'm quite settled in Melbourne at the moment. And like I said, I think it offers the best opportunity for my stage of where I am within my career in the AFL too. I think I'd be, yeah, silly to move back.
No.
Um, yeah, soon enough without actually getting the most out of myself. And then doing what the other guys have done and relocate back to Adelaide once you've got a strong base underneath you and go from there.
No, fair enough. Now, your strengths and weaknesses as an umpire, how would you describe them?
So I think my work rate. So touching on strengths first, it's funny you say that too, Colin. Like I'm not sure what the environment is. I think just generally within umpiring, we focus a lot on sometimes the negatives, and in the AFL, we tend to do probably a little bit too much of that too within coaching. And I think we don't focus enough on the positives and actually the attributes of an umpire and the strengths, like you just said then too. So when you sort of ask, well, what are your strengths? It's generally one of those things like everyone knows on what they need to get better at, but sometimes people don't actually recognize the strengths that they bring to their own craft. So I've had to try to even recognize that within myself. So I would say with my strengths would be my work rate, my coachability, like my interest in like want to get the best out of myself. And then I think I've really developed some good composure out on the field too. So I'd say they would be my strengths, my development areas. that I could improve on is probably just generally like marking contests. I think in the AFL, they make it really challenging. The players are really smart about what they can and cannot get away with. And because we are assessed to the millimeter, and they've got all the different angles and the camera angles and the arc and assessment pieces from that. It's a very challenging area of the game. So marking contests. And then the other challenge that finding at the moment within teams that are smart about it is this sort of stand versus outside 5 meters within the protected area and what they can and cannot get away with. So yeah, some of the areas that I'm working through consistently week to week that I'm trying to get better at.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. So, some of the AFL umpires that you mix with, we've been very fortunate to speak to on these Zooms. Who have been a couple of the really influential ones for you?
Yeah, great question. Like, I must admit, coming through the Sandful, like Lee Howson, Craig Flair, Curtis the Boy, Eleni, all the guys that from obviously South Australia were really pivotal for me when I was sort of coming through the Sandful, and then even making the move to Melbourne and get yourself comfortable and set up. And then even like rolling into training for the first night, because obviously the best way I can describe it is you're just going to a new workplace. Like you feel like you're the new guy per se, and you want to try to see where you sit within the culture of the group and things like that, and sort of filter your way through. So that they were very influential earlier in my career. And to be honest, like I still speak to Lee almost every week, probably every week. And then Craig, yeah, fairly regularly too, from their experience level, but also more so in Melbourne. Get along very well with Brett Roseberry, Andrew Heffernan, Justin Power, Hayden Gavine, Dan Johansson, and then even like Matt Nichols and Simon Meredith. So you sort of find where you sit, and you sort of get a gauge of where people are at with when you travel with them too. Because when you go to training, it's all very rushed. Like you're sort of jumping between coaching session to coaching session and game review, and you find that you don't actually get to know some of the guys on a personal level unless you actually get the opportunity to travel with them too, or else you're sort of just turning up on game day and then it's game day. And I'm sure you guys on the call are probably a little bit the same too. So, and because at training, you've probably heard at the moment, we don't do a lot of the physical stuff together like we used to. A lot of it's skill-based and coaching. So we need to find our own time to get the physical workload done. But yeah, that's probably most of the guys that I'm, very close with. On the list itself, I get along with everyone. We're actually really in a good culture space at the moment, in terms of the people on the list, which also makes it really easy. So then when you go from week to week, you're not sort of dreading actually umpire. Well, I don't dread and ever thinking, oh, I've got to umpire with that person or anything. So from what I've heard in the past, like the way, you got special guest next. Well, I'm not going to break your news here, Colin, if you haven't said anything, but he said in the past that there was a real sort of culture divide between some of the young guys and the more experienced guys, which is just not even evident anymore. And I guess the guys have created a really good environment for that to happen too. So, I think it's in a really good place at the moment in terms of that.
Oh, I'm going to break it. For those of you that don't already know, Ray Chamberlain's going to be our special guest next week, which will be a fantastic way for us to finish the year. What's Razor like to umpire with and to be around? He's a unique individual, isn't he?
He is. Everyone is really, especially on the list itself, and everyone's got their own little intricacies and quirks, and he's very much umpires to the letter of the law, which is fantastic because that's what umpiring is all about. And he goes about it in a very specific way. So from his game prep and his routine and his warm up to then how he actually holds himself, obviously out on the field, is actually quite different to how he is in person too. So you'll get a bit of an idea about that next week. Like he's really funny. He's really charismatic too. So you'll get a bit of exposure to that to that next week. But yeah, I guess I was pretty lucky that I actually came through at the same time as him, and yeah, I've learned a lot off him too. And he's one of the umpires that will watch a game of football that you umpire, and then he'll actually follow up and send you a text and say, "Hey, I thought you did this really well. Have you thought about doing this next time?" and things too. So that's how we also drive that internal feedback amongst each other too, which is great. So no, he's been a really integral part for our group, and obviously he's finishing up, and yeah, he'll be missed.
So I could keep going, but I'm going to open it up because I know there's some on the line that would love to say hello. I can see Croz is probably eager to unmute himself. He'll say something, I'm sure. But yeah, over to you guys. If you want to ask Jamie a question, feel free to unmute yourself and fire away.
Jamie, my name's Ali. I just wanted to say, firstly, thanks so much for sharing your journey and opening yourself up. It's really insightful, so thank you. I've got like a bajillion questions, but I'll limit it to two. Firstly, I was interested when you said that you can critique your own performance.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you do that with the sound on and, listen to the commentary and also get that because I know it's a blur when you're in the heat of the battle, but then when you watch it back, you'd be listening to the crowd. And secondly, I'm really interested in whether you have like a favourite team. Like you obviously grew up loving footy, you probably supported a team. How do you put that I guess initial bias to one side, going forward, or is there a game or is there a team that you will just never umpire?
Hey, good question. So firstly, to answer your first one, I'm really lucky. My family are great supporters of me, and generally they will watch the game live with commentary. And so post game, my dad actually gives me a run sheet off the back, and he will generally tell me what the commentators have said at different points of what I'm involved in. So if there's any controversy there, I can quickly have a look at those things. And then, most of the time they've got, unfortunately, no idea of really what they're talking about in terms of the rules. So we can sort of move on from that pretty quick. So then post game, I mute it because it means nothing to me. And then I just watch it in silence, which is also not that exciting too, but yeah, so that's how I go about my post-game review personally. Everyone's different, like I said. And then, yeah, like I touched on, I grew up in Sydney. So followed the NRL, and I still do. That's probably my outlet. Like I really like the Sydney Roosters. And like I said, I caught up with a good mate of mine in Sydney last week, and we actually went to a local union game. So that's my outlet away from footy, which I think is also really healthy for me. So I never actually really had a strong team growing up as a result of that too. I moved to Adelaide, didn't really like the Crows. I didn't really like Port. I liked the players. I loved Adam Goods. I loved Ben Cousins, Andrew McLeod, like some of the greats that have been in the game itself. And then obviously going through umpiring, you watch the AFL, you see the stars of the game that are in. And then when I actually got to the AFL, yeah, at the start, it was a little bit starstruck. Like you go to these club visits, you meet the coach, you interact with the players, you umpire their different drills and things. And I was a bit amazed by it. But then also I was a bit sometimes disappointed because I was like, oh, I thought that person would have acted a bit more like this in person when they might have not too. So that's also the different side of it too, like the personalities of some of these players too, which is always quite interesting to sort of unpack. So I hope that answers your question, Ali.
Great answers. Thanks, heaps.
All right, next.
Jamie, my name's Mike, mate. Your segment on Friday Night Footy was outstanding, and like you said, needs to happen more.
Yeah,
I'm real strong in supporting umpires and getting kids involved. I always talk about my son on these Zoom meetings, mate. He's loving umpiring lately. He had the privilege of meeting Matt Stevic early in the year, and still talks about that.
Yeah.
But we watched that together as a family, and the two kids were locked onto that, and they really enjoyed it. And I thought to myself, if the AFL and your umpiring department can do more to encourage that, the better, because it starts to really, it exposes umpires more to the community, and that leads on to my next thought. Don't worry what commentators say, because a lot of the time, like you said, they've got no idea what they're talking about anyway. And I truly believe that they've got a big role to play in promoting you guys as umpires and also really learning the rules so that the community then can follow in those footsteps and learn the rules more. And then it's going to lessen the more of the negativity that's happening towards that umpiring at all levels at the moment, mate. I don't know. And I guess that I want that then to lead to, how are you going with the pressures of umpiring? Does it affect you? Is your well-being good? Does it affect you?
Yeah, great questions. Firstly, I think it's great that they're trying to humanize us. Like I was saying before, they're actually showing personality to the face that you see on the screen, which is great. And I think BT was saying it's the second time they've done it in 10 years. I think from where they're sitting, unfortunately, it's all about eyeballs on screens. And that's why they haven't come to the umpires' rooms very often. And as you saw, it's not that riveting down there too. So we tried to bring a little bit of humour to his interview, but he was just jumping around so many different questions. It was a bit.
He actually didn't listen to a lot of your answers.
No.
Which was a little bit rude, to be honest.
Yeah, no, you probably watch him in the rooms. He bounces around really.
Yeah.
He loves it. But no, it was good to have him down, and Brett and Stev, they held us really well, which was good. And then to the second part of your question, yeah, I'm not on Twitter. I don't have Foxtel. I don't subscribe to any of that stuff. To be honest, I actually live in a little bit of my own shell, under a rock a little bit. So when something actually happens at training and someone says, "Oh, did you see this from the weekend?" I'm a bit like, "No, I got no idea what you're talking about." And then if I think it's of interest for me to get better, well, then I'll look at it. And if it's not, I just, let it brush past, because I think that's really important too. You need to filter the information, which is important, because at the end of the day, I'm employed by this is the way I look at it. I'm employed by the AFL, and I want to do what's right by the umpiring department. So as long as they're happy with what I did or what it was done on the weekend, regardless of what social media has to say, that's all I care about, really, because they're the ones that are going to pick me each week. It's not going to be the media. So that's the way I try to filter it within my own head. I had probably remember when dissent got brought in, and it was pretty hot to start off with, let's call it, in the way that they wanted it enforced. I think it was, from memory, it was if the hands are like out and directed at you, to pay a dissent free kick or 50 metres. And I remember I had a game, it was one of the first games when it got brought in, and Chad Warner turned around and did it to me, so I paid 50 straight away. And then apparently after that, there was a big blow up on socials and Fox Footy and all of this sort of stuff following, which I wasn't even aware of until Jeno, who was our head coach, called me the next day and was just wanting to know a little bit more about why I paid 50. So it was like, oh, okay. So yeah, just generally, I just try to filter what's important and what's not important. Mike, or else you just get overwhelmed by it all, I think.
Good on you, mate. Thank you. Thank you for what you do.
Easy, mate. Thanks.
Anyone else before I jump in with a couple more questions and we wind up? Kryles, I was waiting for you to unmute yourself. Over to you, mate.
G'day, Jamie. Good to see you, mate.
How are you, mate? Congrats on the 100 this week.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, no, we always enjoyed umpiring with you back in the day, and did a bit of travelling together as well. So yeah, it's always great to see you on the TV, and I follow you closely, and yeah, it looks like you're doing a great job as well. So just a quick question. I know we don't have a lot of time. Just outside of the training, what's a typical week look like for you, sort of fitness wise? What do you get up to in that beautiful weather?
Yeah, so we, as you probably know, we wear a GPS monitor and like the little bralette things and all the rest. And generally we have a quota which we have to meet each week, which sits at about 25k of what they call long speed run, which is anywhere between 5-minute K pace to 6-minute K pace. And then underneath that, need to hit about 1.5 kilometers of what they call like gut run, which is about 3-minute K pace. And then Jacko, our strength and conditioning coach, wants us to hit about 150 meters of sprinting each week, which you generally get within the game anyway. So for me, this week I ran 10k this morning. I ran that long speed sort of run. And then I'll probably do another long speed run, which will sit about 5 to 6k on Thursday. Umpiring on Saturday. I'm at Carlton on Friday morning for a club visit. So I'll probably get some of my sprinting and gut running in there without doing a lot of that long speed running within that session. And then we'll fly out Friday night for the game on Saturday. And then I'll hit the rest of my quota for the week within the game on Saturday. And then Monday morning rolls around again and we just rinse and repeat, really. With my workload at the moment within the physiotherapy practice, I don't have a lot of scope. As a lot of, I'm sure the guys online, you got full-time jobs, so you've got to find the time to get your running done out of hours. So that's where generally I sit week to week, Cros.
Very mate. Well, good luck for the rest of the year, and hopefully you go deep in finals this year.
Yeah, thanks, mate. And the same to you. Congrats on your 100.
Thanks, mate.
All right, I've got one more for you, Jamie, and then we're going to have to wind up because it'll cut off. But leading up to big games like you've had and you're going to have, what advice do you have for those on the line that have got big games coming up with finals and grand finals?
Yeah, well, all the best. Like I said before, try not to get ahead of yourself. I'm certainly not, because I know I'm not certain yet, but it's really important that you just stay in the moment. Leading up to the game itself, try not to umpire the game before it's actually happened, or else you're going to be mentally fatigued going into the game itself. Like, get your prep work done, but then also give yourself some time to just chill out. And then in the game itself, I very much have a thing that I really try to focus on is like patience. Delay your whistle, delay your vision. That's something that rolls through my head week to week to week. The patience piece is around just letting the whole contest unfold, whether it be a marking contest, holding the ball process, general mark, whatever it sort of looks like, just to make sure that you're not diving into something, because once you've blown your whistle, it's gone, right? So, and even still, I try to actually run, and actually have a conscious thought to run with my whistle a little bit lower, like literally holding it down a little bit lower, to make sure that if I am inclined to blow the whistle, I'm going to actually give myself a little bit more processing time prior to actually, pulling the trigger. I think generally those simple things will keep you in good stead. And then just generally, just get out on the ground early, just try to embrace it, soak it up. And that will actually also relax you too. So you're not rushing anything you're doing out there. That's the best way I try to go about it, Colin.
Great stuff. Timed it well. It's about to cut off. So thanks for putting time aside. We are all really proud of you. Those that had anything to do with you along the way, just seeing what you're doing. You credit yourself, and we really wish you best, not only for this year, but all your future years in umpiring. Congratulations and good luck.
No, awesome, mate. Thanks for having me again. Thanks for the invite. I've really enjoyed it, and all the best for everyone else's games for the rest of the year. 2024, round it out really well, and have fun, enjoy it, go well.
Thanks, Jamie, and I really enjoyed that chat. And right, one more to go. Razor Ray next week, and that will be a great chat as well. So see you all on Wednesday night for training.